Welcome to the Shopify Happy Hour. On the Shopify Happy Hour, you'll hear from Shopify founders, operators, and experts on growth marketing strategies, lessons learned from the trenches, and other nuggets of e-commerce wisdom shared over a different drink each episode. Today, I'd like to welcome Ronnie Teja, founder of Branzio Watches, which produces versatile watches designed to be worn every day. Ronnie, welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me, bud.
Of course, so good to have you on. So we were just talking about what do we cheers with, and we're going back and forth with coffee, protein shake. You've got a protein shake, I got a coffee, but I just had a protein shake. So let's talk protein shakes, man. What kind of how often are you drinking protein shakes? What exactly are you drinking over there?
Yeah, it's a company that recently sold, in fact, for $1 billion called Ghost, and I kind of like the peanut butter protein. So that's what I have before I go to bed. So we are about 12 hours apart, I think. So I had usually all my caffeine is done by 12 o'clock. But before you go to bed, you have a protein shake, and that's my little treat to myself, like a dessert.
That's awesome. Probably much smarter than drinking coffee. So yeah, we're about 12 hours apart. So 10 a.m. East Coast US. Ronnie's 12 hours ahead. So, slam or yeah, 11 hours ahead. So slamming coffee right before bedtime probably isn't the best idea. But yeah, what's nice about protein shakes is you can, depending on what you're doing, they are like a little bit of dessert. If you're not, I think for people who don't have a clean diet, if you're eating sugar all the time and lots of candy, you might drink a protein shake and be like, what is this thing? But if you're eating real food most of the time, protein shakes can be delicious.
Yeah. That's why I do it. I've got a sweet tooth. So that's a really interesting thing that you bring up. Like I literally have a sweet tooth. So like before bed, I crave something sweet, but this is my substitute.
That's awesome. And you sleep well having it right before bedtime?
A little bit. I'll drink it through, and I'll keep it next to the bedstand, and then slowly. It's got creatine as well, so it's like literally like some muscle recovery, some all this fun stuff. So you feel a little better in the morning before you go to the gym.
That's amazing. Well, good for you for adding creatine. A buddy was asking about supplements recently, and creatine is probably, if not one of the most studied, like, let's say, muscle enhancing supplements. It is incredibly safe. It is effective. But what's really nice too, outside of muscle enhancements, is there's some neurocognitive benefits too. So supposedly, if you have creatine in your system, not only is it good for your mind, but it can be protective against things like, so creatine is amazing. So good for you for drinking protein and creatine and staying healthy and smart. Good job.
Thanks, bud. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, let's get things kicked off. You've got an interesting background. You've done a lot of stuff in marketing and e-commerce, and I want to hear about all of that. But let's start with e-commerce. You've got a brand, Branzio Watches, but how did you get into e-commerce?
Yeah. It's an interesting story. And so I'm a first generation immigrant to Canada. So the accent still remains. I mean, as of now, today I'm 40 this year, so it's like 20 years of my life I lived in India, and the other 20 years of my life I lived in my newly adopted home of Canada. In 2005, my family called me up. I was doing a master's in London, and they said, "Look, we won the golden ticket." The golden ticket essentially meant that we were getting an opportunity to immigrate to Canada, and fair enough, we landed, it's every immigrant has a similar story. May 14th, we landed. May 15th, I had a job. My first job was basically picking blueberries. And I was this guy with a chip off his shoulder. I was like, well, you know what? I got my master's in economics. I'll have a job waiting for me, and there'll be people waiting for me to do stuff. Lo and behold, my first job was basically picking blueberries. And basically, I had never done manual labor in my life before, right? So I was like, holy shit, what is this, right? And so it was pretty humbling. So it was me basically standing in a field picking blueberries at like 5 a.m. to like 5 in the evening. And to be really honest, I did it for 3 months. I didn't do it for too long, but like I was a really bad blueberry picker because I could only make like 40 or 50 bucks a day. Whereas like all the other folks who were there, they're like these old Indian aunties and uncles, and they were making like 150 bucks a day. And I was like, shit, I really suck at this. But it's a humbling experience. I knew what not to do. So it was good in that sense, right? And then basically like over the next couple of years, I basically taught myself online marketing, reading blogs, and I remember this is like when I landed in 2005, my sister was going to university in Canada, and she was like, hey, you got to check out this thing. It's called YouTube. And I was like, what is YouTube? And she's like, you can watch whole movies on this. And this is like before the DMCA and all this fun stuff. And she was like showing me movies, and you could literally, and I was like, remember 2005, man? I mean, people are going to like laugh at me for them, but it's like, this is the first time I've seen like you can stream stuff online and you don't really need to download it. And it's like, what this is like awesome. So I was like, okay, there's some future in this thing, but we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. And so I basically like, taught myself online marketing, like I said, with blogs. Got my first job at HSBC. Second job was at Best Buy. And Best Buy was a fantastic experience because I was a media buyer, like a media buyer for a company called Future Shop, which is Best Buy's other brand in Canada. And I used to get like a budget of like $5 million. That's 5 million mistakes I got to make on a day, on a yearly basis. And basically from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day, I would be thrown campaigns. And I learned retail from Best Buy because Best Buy is really good at pushing out deals, like 3 deals a day. You need to know who to target. You need to know how to do this. And I worked with Facebook and Google on a daily basis, just pushing these deals left, right, and center, left, right, and center. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing, right? And so that's how I got started. And then I basically worked there for a couple of years and I said, look, I want to do something by myself. And then somehow in a magazine, this is the era of magazines, unfortunately, I opened up The Economist and I found out that the margins in watches, quartz watches specifically, was about 80%. And I was like, shit, why am I not doing this? So I was looking around for a job, or it was like a job, 10 grand in the bank account, and you try something and see how you go about it. And that's how I got started, man. That was me. And, I'll take, sorry if I spoke too much, but that's exactly how I did. It was no job, next chapter of my life, 10 grand in the bank account, go work for somebody else or try and take a chance on yourself. So that's
That's amazing. I love the start. So we got to go back to the blueberry story. I think lots of people, myself included, can learn and get motivated about what you do want to do by working in something that you don't want to do. And I've had a fair amount of, manual labor jobs and things where I'm like, ooh, I do not want to be doing this for the next 60 years. Like this is super hard work. So were you getting paid by like the bushel of blueberries or something?
yeah. It was basically what they would do is by the end of the day, you would have to like go and weigh these buckets in, and you would weigh, and they would pay you by the weight. So you can imagine how much weight I was pulling. Not much, to
Gotcha.
be honest.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I'd never done manual labor before, right? Like kids in the West, like when you're growing up, you do some sort of manual labor. Like it's okay, you go fix the yard, you'll go mow the lawns, you'll do all this kind of stuff. In India, because you have, I mean, I hate to sound spoiled, but you have help because labor's so cheap. You've got 1.5 billion people that even, I didn't know anything about this. So it's okay. You learn. At 20, I started doing it. I was
Gotcha.
pretty
So
late to
what?
the, yeah.
So how has that affected you now when you look at blueberries? Do you enjoy them? Do you appreciate them
I
more? Well,
love
how is
them.
that?
I love them. Till the time I don't have to pick them, I'm good with them.
That's awesome. Yeah, they're super tasty. They're good for you. Yeah, it's a
And
nice
rich in antioxidants, man. I'll take them.
antioxidants, and it's a nice reminder that like this whole digital marketing thing is really nice. Awesome. Okay, so fantastic. Mm. At Best Buy, sounds like that was a really cool time in your life from learning e-commerce and retail. Was there anybody there who was showing you the ropes, or were you literally learning everything online, figuring stuff out as you went, and then you had this budget that you could then test with?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that have happened there, right? So let's say three things happened. Number one, most of my education came from like Google and Meta reps who were there. They were the guys who would explain to me what to do, what not to do. Remember, this was a time that in Canada, I could buy the homepage of Facebook for like 30 grand. Like I could literally take over all impressions, 100% impression share on Facebook for $30,000. Imagine trying to do that today. I'd be like, holy shit, this is crazy, right? And YouTube pages used to cost me 40 grand. So I was like, crazy. But I learned a little bit about how retail works in terms of deals, in terms of brands, because of a guy I worked with as a marketing manager. So the way it worked was you had a marketing manager, and then the marketing manager would work with the media buyer and a promotions team to like cycle out deals as quickly as possible. And so this guy, he was a very soft-spoken Taiwanese Canadian fellow by the name of Alan, and he taught me a lot about these kind of things. And he was very patient with me. Keep in mind, I mean, back then I was pretty like cowboy gung ho type of thing. I still have a big personality, but not as big as I used to. And he knew how to communicate with me in a very logical way, which is the reason I'm talking about him here. And then to add to that, I also had a very patient manager, and that manager was also like, he's like, you look, I don't, you do your job. We don't really care. Till the time, till the time I don't hear about you, go do whatever you want. I was like, perfect, man, love you. And so it ended up being, so it was a good way of like doing it. But like in terms of most of my education, like coming back to that question, was mostly through Google and Facebook reps and online. But imagine this is 2012, right? This is like the heyday of online advertising. Shopify was just coming up like this.
Yep. That's amazing. Yeah, I remember the days where you could buy full page takeovers on some of the big platforms. I used to call on Facebook to buy ad space before they were actually selling ad space. I was like,
Yeah,
come on, guys, like, I just want to buy some pop-ups. It's no problem. They're like, oh, let's go talk to Mark and figure this out. And
yeah.
yeah, was trying to get pop unders on
And
Facebook, but
Microsoft's teams in local markets used to lead Facebook sales.
yep.
Because Microsoft back then owned 20% of Facebook, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, yep. Yeah, and this is also when the Facebook login was on all sorts of other random sites. I remember speaking with tech companies and they would use the Facebook login where you could use your, user ID from Facebook to log in as their
Yeah,
sort of outsourced login. I remember seeing that for the first time. Like, what's wrong with you guys? Why are you using this Facebook thing to log in? Is this going to be a thing now? It's like you can use Facebook to log in everywhere.
that's crazy.
Nice. Okay, come a long way. So, okay, so then you get to the point where you're like, do I make the leap and go into e-commerce for myself? You recognize that watches had a pretty nice markup. So, what happened from there? How'd you get things started?
Yeah, so there's two things that happened primarily in my life. Number one is I did what everybody else, the mistake that everybody else makes is, which is basically go to Alibaba and try and source through Alibaba. I still make that mistake today because I tried to do it 6 months ago and then failed miserably. But the problem is if you're not on the ground, if you ever want to do business in China or whatever country you are, my 2 cents that I would always say from all the failures that I've had is you need to go to the place where you want to manufacture. And what you have to be wary of is there's middlemen, right? Which is traders, which is fine. I mean, that's there's no harm in making a buck. But how much bucks you're gonna make is the problem, right? Some people make a 200-300% markup on your coin, and some people, because you are a babe in the woods, and that's short-term business, they'll discard you. Or some people will make a 20% markup, and then you'll be friends forever. I unfortunately found a 300% markup guy, and then we got screwed. And then I said, look, and by that time I was eating into my savings, and I was like, shit, there's something wrong here.
If you're enjoying this episode and getting value from it, I'd be so grateful if you left a quick review. It's one of the best ways to support the show and help us bring on even more incredible experts to share insights that can move the needle for your business. It only takes 10 seconds and makes a big impact. Thank you so much for tuning in and for joining us on the Shopify Happy Hour.
So then I found out that there in Hong Kong, every year there's a watch and clock fair. It happens twice a year. And so I called up a buddy. Of course, I was bootstrapped. So I called a buddy, and bootstrap is code for poor. And then basically called up my buddy and I said, look, can I come crash on your couch? He's like, well, you're welcome to come. So I basically ended up crashed on his couch surfing. And I was supposed to stay like a week. I ended up staying a month while this fair was going on. I mean, it's a big fair. Like it happens for over 2-3 weeks, right? Ended up at the fair every day. I used to go and comb each and every stall, ask questions, right? Like it's like every floor till like these guys on like by the end of week 2, they knew who I was. They're like, this guy is he's a tire kicker. He's wasting our time, blah, blah, blah. But there was one guy, right? At the end of the day, there was this one gentleman who was there and he said, do you want to see how watches are made? I'm like, yeah, I'd love to. And, he said, come on down. He says, he was as enthusiastic. Come on down, come on down and see my watch factory, hoping that he'd get like a little bit of business. But then long story short, he invited me to his house, which was a big mistake. I ended up staying with him for another couple of weeks, right? So I ended up spending time with him, his family. And at the end of it all, he said, I said, look, I don't have much money. And he was a bit disappointed there, but I told him my plan to sell online, use Facebook ads, to scale using everything, right? And he said, I'll tell you what, he says, if you want the cheap and cheerful stuff, what I can do for you, right, is that I have all these OEM stuff that a customer doesn't want. Why don't I just put your logo on this and I'll give it to you for free, right? You just pay for the logo printing. I said, sure, right? So your cost of market entry is basically like maybe $1,000 for 2,000, 3,000 watches, which is next to nothing. So you're like, perfect. This is like a sale. So you take what you had, which is about $5,000-6,000, you put it back into the Facebook ads machine, and then you just watch it grow. I got lucky because of the kindness of my friend in Hong Kong, this factory owner, and that was mostly it, right? Because nobody would have just given me something like at these giveaway prices.
Well, I would say it's more than luck, right? You leveraged what you had. You leveraged a relationship from a buddy. You had the initiative to go over there and find where all of these watch manufacturers would be. And then you spent weeks learning the inside scoop of how watches are made. And I imagine, what makes a quality watch versus a low quality watch and what are the important things to
Yeah.
look for when you're purchasing. And then you built a relationship with the manufacturer. cut you a killer deal. So that's amazing. Okay, so you get a couple thousand watches, you've got some budget to invest in Facebook, and then where do things go from there? How do you grow from there?
Yeah, lots of fun failures along the way. Number one, PayPal banned my account within a few weeks of launch because PayPal thought I was up to no good, and that's what happened. Number one. Number two, Stripe Stripe held my funds. That was for 50% of the funds. So I was like, this is a cash flow business, man. I need to keep reinvesting money. I think it was like, so we were growing pretty quickly, and then uh, you know, the powers that be, which is platforms, basically started holding on to the money. Facebook, well, not Facebook was okay. Got an account ban, but got it back after a few weeks. So it's like all these things, because I'm a babe in the woods, right? I don't know all these things that are going to happen. And the thing is, you're starting a business, so you're stressed out. So, you got to maintain your Facebook account. You got to maintain your PayPal account. You got to maintain your Stripe account. You got to keep all these guys in good standing. You got to do all the shit, and then hopefully things come through, right? It's an interesting process. I mean, the PayPal thing ended up being good because the Canadian dollar dropped against the US dollar. So I got like, it was 1.2, I got 1.4 back. So it was like a solid 10% return for 6 months of PayPal keeping my money. Shopify was just coming up. So Shopify made things a lot more interesting. The problem is also like there's a lot of people out there, I'm sure that for entrepreneurs who, and this is something I think I've learned over the years, that people like, same example as Chinese suppliers. They occur anywhere in the world, right? People who do short term business, people who basically come in, they overcharge you, they overquote you, and then they basically screw you, and then they disappear, right? Has been my experience with contractors and everybody else. To this day, I just trust people at face value because I think that's what humanity is all about, because I believe they're good people. But what they do with their karma is their problem, right? My job is to trust people the first time they say their story. And then, of course, there's a few things that I think personally that happened. I think the first thing, if I were to recall, was, sorry if I'm just recalling it, is I burnt out. I burnt out within 3 months, because that's what not a lot of people will tell you, right? I can tell you all these stories of guts and glory and the roads are paved with gold, but it's also like I was John from customer service. I was John from on email. I was the guy. Now that people are telling you we call cart abandonment calls and stuff, I was the guy. I used to proactively do it in 2014 myself. And my accent was a lot deeper, so they thought it was a scam call from India, which I don't blame them for. That's okay, man. It's funny. And what else was there? And I was sitting around trying to figure out how to code, and I couldn't do it. So I had this Ukrainian developer who spoke next to no English. So we were communicating via Google Translate, which kind of was interesting. And then 3 months in, I hit the bottle, man. I was like, shit, I need to de-stress. And that was probably the worst mistake, right? Because nobody teaches you these things. Like entrepreneurship's a roller coaster, right? It's like, I don't drink now. It's been 5 years or 6 years for the better, but it's kind of like nobody explains that roller coaster that goes on in your head and the roller coaster that's happening in your life. And I wish there was somebody who could have told me about it. But luckily, I had a friend who basically read about, the Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week. He knew the whole BA situation, introduced me to remote working employees in the Philippines and India. And from there, I kind of understood, okay, well, I don't need to do everything. I can source a bunch of stuff out here, which is pretty good.
That's great. So you mentioned a couple of things there. One is treating people the way you sort of would want to view humanity. And if somebody doesn't react well to that, if they kind of show their cards and they're not being good people, that's in their karma, not yours. I love that, where you don't want to alter who you are in case you're dealing with somebody who might not be the best person or the best long-term business person, but you're still going to act as if they are. So that's fantastic. And I also love that you're keeping it real about entrepreneurship, because it can be a super lonely ride and a very tumultuous one. Lots of ups, lots of downs, and especially if you're on the if you're on the solopreneur path. So what did you do to get out of that rut? Was it as simple as a friend recommended the 4-hour work week, and then you started to learn, hey, I can do some of this, I can outsource some of this stuff, and I don't have to be as much in the weeds? Or was there other stuff that you did to get out of it?
I think the first thing was I actually just asked him, because it's okay. So I know I should have read the book. I still have not read the book. I literally just went and talked to people who've read the book and asked them how exactly they set up their process is. I learned by osmosis. In my case, osmosis basically means that I'm going to talk to Dan, or I'm going to talk to the 3 smartest people I know in this field, and I'm just going to go learn from them. Maybe I'll just probably sit next to them, and by definition of their smartness, I'll get smart, right? Do you know what I mean? So I just learned by talking to people. I'm not a guy who's gonna. Now you got GPT, which is far more interesting. Trust me, and it's changed my life. But I think that that's how I learned. So that's how I learned about like how people are hiring VAs, how people are digital nomads, people are living all around the world, they're traveling, and they're doing all these crazy things. So it was easy for me to like set up my first base of operation in the Philippines, right? But then about three years in, and this is another thing that people are going to tell you at some point in time, is what happens is if you have a large enough team, we found that whoever team leader there was, she basically, I think she knew that I trusted her, and the operations constantly broke down. But then the truth came out was the fact that I think she there was affairs going on in this team, and there was basically like a lot of favoritism and everything else. It was generally ruining the sort of outlook of the team in general. So we had a consultant who basically came in and he to get get the team involved in EOS, so like traction, get a grip, all that fun stuff by Gino Wickman. So our team does a mix of like Rockefeller habits and traction, and then basically that's where we grew. We cleaned out house, we fired a lot of people, we got restarted on this journey of like trying to get A players and trying to got it, want it, and has the ability to undertake it. So that's how we got started in that process, and that took about a year to sort of settle in and do. I mean, I was fired from my own company for a couple of weeks. They're like, look, you're the guy who's going to keep breaking down processes. You need to go take a chill pill. Maybe we'll run things here. And it was good. I mean, 2 weeks of, I was good. I was good on the Slack front because I was made to delete Slack on my phone because I would constantly just like be on it. I just reinstalled it 6 months ago, and I think I kind of like my time without it. But the thing is, we're running a new business, we're running everything new, so I'm far more hands on it.
So what advice do you have for brand owners or any business owner who is either working with, let's say, an outsourced team where they've got freelancers, or just an outsourced team that's not local, or they've got a local team? Like, how do you lead the team without being, sounds like you were, changing processes and just being very, very hands-on, which is, I think, natural for lots of people to do because your business and you care about it. So you want to get in the weeds and kind of make sure you're fixing everything. But what advice do you have for people to lead a team in a way where you can get a sense of if there are problems? So if there's affairs or favoritism or other things that are happening, you can be aware of it and try to fix it, but also not be too much up in the stuff where, maybe you're doing a little.
Yeah, so I think there's two things here. I think you need to hire a good middle level management, like hire good people in the middle, and then trust on them to do their job. Like most, like because I know I'm not an operations guy. Operations annoy the shit out of me, and admin annoy the shit out of me. Right? It's like, so we found two people who basically are really good at these jobs and they enjoy it. I'm like, hey, you go, psh, don't want to be involved in this. And then the marketing, I unfortunately got the short end of the stick because me and him talk to each other every day for like 10 minutes. It's a stand up call, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and then they know. I'm just like, hey man, do you have 10 minutes? And we'll just, sometimes there's a lot of work that 10 minutes becomes 30 minutes. And sometimes 10 minutes is just 10 minutes of me shooting the shit, right? And then it's their job to go lead the teams and just be dependable, right? So the goal behind this whole process is to check in, and we have weekly calls with all the whole team, which is basically a leadership management team. It's 4 people, but fair enough. We have the conversation, and then it's up to them to go manage their teams, and they have teams on a week calls on a weekly basis with their teams. It's important that we always focus on what the long-term vision of the company is. It's always important for them to understand why they're working and what that sort of purpose is going to drive. Over a period of time, it's also about like, our goal is to enrich these people's lives. And the question is, how do we do that, right? So it's not always monetarily. Everybody defaults to monetarily. I've done that a lot of times. But I think it's also the fact that you need to emote with everybody. If somebody's mom is sick or daughter is sick, you got to go out of your way to make sure that you are able to, as a employer or a company, give them the best healthcare that you can, right? So if you hear something like that happen for any employee, you just don't ask questions. You blindly just do it, right? That's always been my, I guess, the way I work, or that's how we work in general as a company. So if there's something that like a calamity befalls you, or the floods in somebody's things, okay, what can we do? How can we help your family? How can we help your immediate family and friends? That I think goes a long way.
Well, that's a great way to be in personal relationships and professional relationships, and leading a team even more so important. So good for you for doing that. So when did you start, Branzio? What year was that?
2015, mate. So about it's a decade in business. 10 years.
Gotcha.
Got my
So
10,000 hours now.
Yeah, nice, nice, nice. So about 10 years or just over 10 years. So a lot has changed, I'm sure, in the past decade for your brand, especially when it comes to marketing. When you first got things going, that was around the time when, Facebook ads were much easier than they are today. There was less competition and there was much
$8
more upside.
CPMs, brother. Dollar
I
CP.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Crazy. So, what are you seeing working now that is quite different than when you first started?
That's an interesting question. I think keep in mind when we started online advertising, right? We were the gung ho kids. And what gung ho kids basically means is the big brands didn't want to touch it. It was like hot potato. It's like, what is this online thing? What's going to happen? We will let other people test it out, then do it for. So Nike wasn't in there, Under Armour wasn't in there, everybody's not in there, right? And then, came Nike. And, I think for the last 3 years, what Nike did was they just spent all the money on online marketing and then they basically got screwed as a brand, right? There's a mix here. And we were all performance marketers, which is basically we were looking at things in, dollar out, right? What is my ROAS? Everything has to be calculated to like, well, how much dollars am I putting on marketing? How much money am I going to get out of it? Today, I think that mindset has shifted. The mindset is basically if you're putting $1 into Facebook ads, what are you looking at from a broader perspective? Are people looking on TikTok for your product? Are people searching on on Amazon for your product? Are people looking for your brand on Google for your product? Same with YouTube ads. It's just all encompassing, right? I mean, I think 2013, 2015, when I started advertising the first time, the average, you could put retargeting limits on your audience, and that retargeting limit was between 8 and 12, right? After 8, people will get annoyed with it. Now, 22, 30, 32, you don't really give a shit. I think now it's more like the more I show this to you, the more annoyed I want you to be so that you remember what the top of mind brand recall is, right? So that's another thing that's changed. So, the overall ecosystem, when I think about like advertising and when I think about marketing is like, performance driven media doesn't exist anymore. I think it's more like an all encompassing thing when you got to look at the complete picture because, you can't be pigeonholed into one platform. Everybody just switches over from all these platforms on a daily basis, right? The second thing that I realized was, of course, what is the value of the brand? We failed miserably at it. I'll be frank. I think we're okay. I think we've done okay at it. I think we could have done a lot better. But that's something I'm educating myself on at the moment, which is basically like, hanging out with people, be like, look, explain this to me. Because it's very hard to go from a performance driven mindset to a brand driven mindset. Once you get to the brand driven mindset, which is basically how you tell your story, how you evolve, how you are able to give the people the reason why, the organic stuff. And it's a waterfall effect, right? So I would say I've maximum been able to be a good performance marketer with an e-commerce brand, but I still have a lot to learn from a brand marketing perspective. I'd love to give you all this big spiel, but I don't want to bullshit anyone. That's
Well, it's good to be self-aware, and we all have gaps. We all have things that we're good at. All have things that we need to learn. And what's fun about working in digital or just marketing in general is that there's always something new. Even if you think you know something, it's going to change in 6 months. Yeah, I like that you're talking about branding versus performance marketing because for a long time it was very much there were the performance marketers, and then there were the brand marketers, right? And the brand marketers were looking at things like awareness and creativity and homepage takeovers as a way to just
yeah.
get in front of lots of people, have lots of reach. And then you can also get into like outdoor and sponsorships and all sorts of other things, but it was kind of hard to track ROI for that stuff. And then you've got your direct response marketers who are very much, yeah, we'll spend $1, we got $3.4 back, and we're going to scale that as high as possible just to have a cash machine. But I agree 100%. I think we're living a little bit in the world of people will say the term brand formance, right? Where it's like you've got to grow your brand, you've got to tell your story, but you've also got to do it in a way that's profitable because otherwise you don't know if you're spending money and if that is going to be a return. But some people have said that a nice way to think about brand is if you turn off all of your performance ads or just all of your paid ads, what happens? And are you still going to generate sales, right? And that is a good, I guess, sign of how strong your brand is. And that includes like organic search results, organic branded search results, what your organic social looks like. And every brand is going to be a little bit different, but I think that's one nice way to look at, I guess, the long-term health of a brand is to say, okay, if we turn everything off, do we just stop making sales in that moment? Or are there some sales that are still going to come through and are people still interested in the brand after we stop the performance marketing?
Correct.
Awesome. Awesome. So what are you seeing now from a let's stay within the lens of performance marketing and generating as efficient of growing e-commerce sales as efficiently as possible. What are you seeing work well now? Are there certain platforms you're seeing outperform others? Are
Yeah.
you seeing certain strategies outperform others?
Well, Meta's always king, right? Meta is always good for driving awareness. Top level, top funnels, all meta, right? I mean, there's a big craze about AppLovin. I haven't tested it out myself, but a lot of my friends who are on AppLovin love it. It's just like, it's amazing. They're like, holy shit, like whatever. The thing is, you just take your top performing creatives on Meta and then you just run it on AppLovin, right? So if you have a way to get on AppLovin, I suggest you do, because they have this beta open right now. If you're spending 10K a day or something on Meta, then you can get qualified to get onto their program right now. So it's a closed beta, but I think it's worth it. Like a lot of people I know, they can't stop speaking about it, right? So I think it's worth it. AppLovin's been the biggest story in advertising for the last year. Before that was TikTok Shop and TikTok creators, right? That's another thing I need to know how to scale, because I'm not really good at that, but I would really love to know how to get that blueprint out and then just like hammer it down, top to bottom. I think most successful e-com store owners that I know, and this is a story I'll share, they take one channel. They go top to bottom of that channel and then exhaust that channel before they move on. And some people will take like I think BK Beauty, Paul, whom I know is he's a good friend. He did a presentation on this. He says, I have 6 months. 6 months is all I'm going to spend on TikTok, dominating TikTok Shop. And today, I think he's in his category, he's number 2 or number 3, which is quite interesting, right? So it's very, very interesting that he's able to do that. And most people are switched on, focus on that. 6 months, right? Just day in and day out. You become a student of the game, right? And that's all you're going to do. If you want to crush influencers, that's 6 months. You just crush influencers. If you want to crush creators, you just crush creators for 6 months. You can't do 10 things in one go. And that's where we all fail.
If you're enjoying this episode and getting value from it, I'd be so grateful if you left a quick review. It's one of the best ways to support the show and help us bring on even more incredible experts to share insights that can move the needle for your business. It only takes 10 seconds and makes a big impact. Thank you so much for tuning in and for joining us on the Shopify Happy Hour. That's great insight. I think that's good for personal goals too. If there's a certain hobby you want to learn, whether it's playing the piano or becoming, learning another language, just going all in instead of spreading yourself too thin with lots of different hobbies or things that can be distractions. So one thing you mentioned earlier is that ChatGPT changed your life. What are you doing with AI now, and how are you using it for personal and professional use?
I think I'm doing what everybody else does, which is basically create a lot of meta static ads after the ChatGPT's last release. Like it's become like a drug. Like in between my sets at the gym, I find myself making like ads on my phone with Meta and giving it prompts. I swear to God. And it's like my trainer's looking at me like, what is wrong with this guy? And I'm like, shh, don't judge me. I just want to create some Meta ads at the gym. I know, man. This is my life right now. I think there's a lot more applications than just creating Meta ads, right? All our company data is analyzed by it. All the creative analysis that I do for Meta ads is done on it. All the LTV projections and calculating like what do you call it, blended ROAS targets are done on it. I think I use it as a therapist. I use it as somebody to talk to back and forth about business decisions. I use it like, act as a McKinsey consultant and tell me about XYZ, tariffs are going to hit. Well, what are the other routes that I have? What can I do? Blah, blah, blah. So there's daily things, there's personal things, there's like, shoot the shit things, or hey, tell me a joke or something. It does have really good dad jokes if you want to know. So I promise you can ask him for some. Or them. I don't know is it a guy or a girl? I don't know. Them, I guess, is the right word. Ask ChatGPT for it, and then there's all this fun stuff, right? So it's like it's literally you have the world. It's what Google did to us in 1997. In India, I remember in 2000. Okay, so not 97. Well, Google launched in 98, and then 2001, 2000, 2001. Google ran a front page ad in the Times of India, right? Which is basically back then when we had newspaper and people used to read newspapers, and they literally said, "We will beat Yahoo search by." I think it was like by at least 2 seconds. If we don't beat them, you'll get an hour of internet free, which is basically, so they give you coupons to go to internet cafes. This is when internet cafes were a thing. So as a student, you're like, well, I'm going to go test this out for $25 or off. the Indian enemy is like, good deal, we'll go check it out. And then we tested it. And that's how Google got its first customers. Crazy. And then we're going through this thing with OpenAI. I mean, it's not just OpenAI. I mean, remember 6 months ago, everybody used to talk about Midjourney for AI generation. Nobody talks about Midjourney today, right? It's gone. It's dead, right? Claude is still there. Claude is a better prompter. Claude writes better prompts than GPT. Claude does better copy than GPT. Claude does a lot of things much better than OpenAI. But then on the other side, you have Magnus, which does deep research better than GPT, for example. So there's 2-3 tools to play with, I think, on a daily basis. But if you're a layperson, I think then stick to ChatGPT. It's pretty good. It's a good driver of free traffic, by the way, like for organic SEO.
How so?
So my background is in SEO, not, it's a little bit. I would say I know a little bit, but not as much as like a lot of my friends. Like again, osmosis, right? Yeah, those guys taught me. I don't know as much as these guys do, but they're seeing that because GPT crawls Bing, and if you have pages that rank extremely high on Bing, and Bing data is being fed into it, you will start ranking for organic search results. So if you're asking it for product-related search results, it'll work extremely well on ChatGPT. Now the other thing is, if you've heard about Amazon's new shopping assistant, that's another game killer, right? Which just came out, which is basically you can ask it for a product. And it doesn't even shop at Amazon for a product. It can actually go around the web to all the e-commerce sites and all the e-commerce system and then give you a product to buy. But I'm like, why isn't Shopify doing it? Because Shopify has all the data. You're sitting on a treasure trove of information. Like, you just killed all the yeah. Overnight, what you've done is you basically changed e-commerce. Like, Meta got eaten for lunch, dude. So, yeah, I don't know.
So what are some ways for any brand owners who are listening right now, whether they're on Shopify or a different e-commerce platform, how can they best use AI? So you mentioned that you're using it for business analytics and decision making. You're using it for copy. You're using it for ad creation. Let's just say if brand owner wanted to better analyze their business and get recommendations on which direction to go in, let's say from a marketing standpoint or strategic standpoint, what would the steps be for them to take in order to get there?
I think it's mostly depending on your prompt, right? So I think what I would do is, first of all, I would go to Claude and I would explain to them the problem in detail. The thing about like all these prompt things is the more detailed you go, and you have to act like a persona, right? So the persona is extremely important. The persona that you want them to assume. If you're looking at like SEO, let's take an example. It's like, oh, act like Neil Patel, the number one SEO in the world, or whatever it is, right? Or like 2-3 guys. I mean, Neil Patel's not number one. I'm sure there's smarter guys out there, but he's got the number one brand personality for that, right? And then you can just say, okay, take that and then act like so and so. Give me an AI generated content strategy that I should be executing for the next 3 to 6 months. Label it out for me on a weekly basis. Tell me what I need to tell my team what to do, and then basically let's stick to the plan, and that's it, right? So then you'll have to give it like maybe 5 or 6 more prompts after that to refine it, because the first prompt is going to be shit, and then you take the Claude prompt and then take it and copy paste it into ChatGPT, and because Claude prompts are much better, it's well structured, and then you paste it into ChatGPT, you make a project which says, Ronnie and Co's SEO plan next 6 months, and then you just follow it, and then what you can do is, what's really good is you can ask it to give you calendar invites for it. So then you can make it into a Gcal or a Apple Cal invite, so that every morning you have this notification waiting for you on what you should be doing, and then what you need to execute at what point of time in the day to sort of fill it up for you. I'm a workaholic, so like I usually have like, I think like in my calendar, most of my stuff starting at 7 till 10 is all booked up with blocks, which says, okay, so just to give you an example. So for example, like in the morning, there's a block for, high output work. Like this is just booked in high output work. I have tomorrow, like SEO, which is my priority. Then I have prompting for meta ads. Then I have analysis for meta ads. And then, then I have strategy session, email catch ups, focus work and meetings, like all these things like done in blocks. So it's just easier.
That's amazing. If you were to, so you mentioned SEO, using AI for SEO. So outside of strategic advice, where you could kind of train the AI to be a persona, some type of SEO expert, and then ask for recommendation, are there other ways you would use AI from an e-commerce standpoint for organic search results to create content in order to rank better? Like, can you use AI to create content that is designed to rank for AI search
You
results?
can. I mean, Google's also said they accept AI generated content now. You just have to. So they're like AI. There was a thing where they had this AI penalty where Google didn't like duplicated content because everybody's going to go to ChatGPT and get the same content. So what you do is you basically take the content, then you put it in Claude, and then you basically get Claude to rewrite it as a non-duplicated content expert. So basically, then it will rewrite it as a non-duplicated content expert, and then you double check it on. There's different websites out there where you can actually check, hey, is this an AI deduper? Will Google detect this as AI generated content? If it doesn't, 99%, then you're good to go. Push it live.
Love it. Love it. Right. If you were starting over and wanted
Yeah.
to build a business, let's say to your first 7 figures, and you're focused on some type of e-commerce business, you had a shoestring budget, think back to, 10K to get things started. What would your game plan be? What would that look like?
Well, I am in that phase. I'm rebuilding another business, and I can tell you what I did. Number one was I flew to China. I went to meet with suppliers. I found the lowest cost product that I needed to do again because I'd made that mistake the first time of trusting people, and then basically set up a supply chain line. And all I needed to do was put my eggs in basket with one supplier whom I know can produce 50 different variations of the product that I want. So I knew that if I want to launch, so for example, for Q2, I have 20 new product launches to do, and they have everything, boom, on a weekly basis ready to go. So if I can outsource that, I can outsource fulfillment. Then what I can focus on is the things I like, which is meta ads, running traffic. Of course, I was a little late to the funnels game, which is more like how to make good funnels. So I think understanding good funnels and good offers is really important because it sets you apart from everybody's e-commerce store. Everybody just thinks it's a race to the bottom, but I think showing value as to why you're doing certain things is extremely important. Yeah.
How did you choose the niche that you're in for the new brand?
Margins, man. It has to be two things. You need a with the CPAs that you see on Facebook today, you need something that's at least 80% margin, 60 to 80% margin plus product, or you need something that is very subscription heavy. Without those two, it's going to be impossible because you're going to get eaten for lunch on Amazon. That's for sure.
All right, let's move to the speed round. So each answer about 60 seconds or less.
Sure.
Oh, this will be an interesting one based on what you said before, but what is one of your most recommended books that you've read?
You know what? I would say it's The Big Short or Barbarians at the Gate. The Barbarians at the Gate I actually like because that's about a hostile takeover situation. I remember my sorry if I go over on this, but my guilty pleasure is reading books about financial crime.
That's fun. That's a good way to, I guess, have insights in case you ever have suspicions about financial crime happening at your
Correct. I
business.
don't know why. I just find it interesting.
Nice, nice, awesome. So, what is an under the radar product or brand that you've used and like, but most people don't know about?
Ooh, that's quite interesting. What did I buy recently? I mean, look, I'm a watch guy, right? So I can talk about like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna blow your mind with this. If you're ever looking for a watch and if you want to test out like a really good watch, like which looks like a Rolex or which looks like any of these high-end fancy watches, go to AliExpress and look for a watch. And you can buy the same watch for like $100. I buy my watches sometimes on AliExpress. I'm in the watch business and I still go to AliExpress to buy watches because some of these watches, the Chinese watchmaking industry is growing like this right now compared to Switzerland. And they're doing so much cool shit. And for like $100, you can't really go wrong.
And will the quality be there, or will it just be a
Oh, great
replica?
quality. They're using NH35 Seiko movements, Seiko and Casio movement. It's the same movement. The only thing they don't have made in Switzerland. I mean, most of the Swiss brands, like at least 40% of them are made in China, man. They're
I
not
get it.
100% made in Switzerland, believe it or not.
I think everybody listening to this is getting their Christmas list ready or birthday list ready for anybody.
Exactly.
Anybody they would normally buy a watch for, like, I can't get a watch for them because I don't want to drop, $5,000. Now you just found your gifting hack.
Exactly.
Nice. Tell us about your favorite shopping experience, online or offline.
An interesting one. I'm a sucker for service, right? Maybe because I live in Thailand and I'm spoiled. But I remember the Four Seasons. I always compare my experience to the Four Seasons experience. And there's a Four Seasons in Chiang Mai. I went and stayed there during COVID, and end to end, that experience was just something. And then I realized what the Four Seasons experience actually means, because I went there to like stay for a couple of days. They upgraded my room, fantastic, since I arrived. Then they basically, I want to play tennis with them, or like, I was talking to the coach. I was like, hey, look, I'm just trying to lose some weight. At dinner, this guy, the chef, comes out with like a health menu. He's like, oh, I've heard through the grapevine that you're trying to lose weight. And they basically had like all these calorie conscious meals with how much calories you're going to consume on a daily basis. He says, for your breakfast and lunch, I can prepare special meals for you. If you just tell me a calorie, what you want to eat, eat between, and I'll just make it for you. And when I checked out, they basically gave me like a nice packed lunch of like, 1,000 calories. And they're like, this is for you. Thanks for coming by and stuff. I was like, the hell is this? And then, how do you beat that? How do you beat that? How do you beat that? You can't.
Yeah, I love it. It's they're experts at listening, and then they find one nugget and then going all in with it and just understanding the customer better than most other brands. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I wish we could do this in ecom, right? I wish there was somebody who could dial in your customers every day and just be like, hey, thanks for being a part of our brand, or like, what can we do to make it better? Some guys do it better than others, but not to that level of Four Seasons, right?
Yep. What's one thing in life you do better than most people just naturally, and how do you do it?
I don't know, man. I'll do a lot of shit things. I think one thing I might be able to do naturally better is connecting people. I'm a connector. So, which is like, if you know somebody, if you're looking for somebody who knows somebody and be like, hey, do you know somebody who does this? I'm like, maybe, right? I like to connect people. So in Malcolm Gladwell's realm of things, I'd be a super connector. That's the way.
So how do you do that? How do you know who to connect to who, and how have you built your network to have enough people in it where you can connect people?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not very shy of going to talk to people, right? So I'll just usually talk to people about what they do, what they can, or I'll ask people to, hey, like, hey, do you know somebody who does this? And then I'll go approach them. Pretty social in that sense. But then when people want to be connected to someone, I'm always like open to that, right? It's like, hey, let me just. I think this is something I learned from a friend in Hong Kong, where his name's Roman, he's in e-commerce, and he basically said he always gives, and he's very open at giving. So this is something I took from him maybe 4 or 5 years ago, which is basically like, you just give freely. Don't worry about the ROI, because some people want to skim a connection commission. And I think it's kind of bizarre if you do that to mates, or if you do that to people and I'm just like, oh, here you go. Whatever you guys do together, it's your problem. I'm out of the situation. That's basically it.
Fantastic. Ronnie, we're going to wrap up in a minute, but I got to say there's a reason why I have this mug for my coffee today. So this is the saying on it is good things come to those who go out and fucking hustle. And I think it's
Yeah.
very appropriate for this interview with you because you're a hustler, man. You're out there getting it. You got several businesses. You've been in e-commerce for a while. You're doing a lot of stuff with marketing, AI. You're doing some super cool stuff. So I think it was meant to be that I pulled that mug out. So
Thanks, bud.
before we wrap up, where can people connect with you to learn more?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's always good. You can just go to Google, type in my name, Ronnie Teja. You'll find on my LinkedIn, my Instagram, everything on there. It's just quite easy to.
Awesome. Fantastic. Ronnie, thank you so much for bringing Branzio to market, all the other businesses that you're invested in and bringing to market as well. Thanks for sharing your expertise and insights with our audience on artificial intelligence, marketing, e-commerce, all of it, and for joining us on the Shopify Happy Hour.
Thanks, bud. Appreciate you.